Someone's basking in blood. Here's a look at the upcoming release, Kotobukiya, Texas Chainsaw Massacre ArtFx Leatherface Slaughterhouse version. Kotobukiya takes another step into the world of horror, bringing you a classic film slasher direct from the Hardesty family homestead. Stepping straight out of the 1974 film The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Leatherface joins the series of ArtFx statues. Featuring his grisly mask made of human skin and wielding his chainsaw, Leatherface also sports his signature yellow apron that comes splattered in blood. He arrives with a steel base that can be placed freely on. Magnets in his feet provide stability when changing placement. The design of the base is meant to replicate the still photo at the beginning of the movie. His mask features real hand-tied string, accurate to the film. Leatherface's head and left elbow are movable, giving it an eerie, lifelike characteristic. Each terrifying feature is rendered in great detail, making this exclusive limited edition statue a must-have for any horror fan's collection. There's plenty of gore in store, but before we get a closer look at the Slaughterhouse version of the ArtFx statue of Leatherface, obviously, the first thing we're going to want to do is take this tape measure and put it right at the very top of his head. That will give us a good read of just how tall the statue stands. And we'll do some comparisons with the cleaner version of Leatherface, like there's such a thing, in a second. But before, of course, doing that, the statue stands 12.7 inches in height. Switching that over to centimeters, and you're looking at the ArtFx Slaughterhouse Leatherface, 32.3 centimeters tall. And once again, I'd like to thank the folks over at Kotobukiya that allowed me the chance to get this early look out at their upcoming release of ArtFx statue, both the clean version and the Slaughterhouse version of Leatherface. The Slaughterhouse version seems to be releasing later into this year. Most of the online sites seem to be advertising him for a release of December 2021. So we are looking at this guy super early. I'm going to slide this guy over carefully because, of course, for the comparisons, we will want to bring in the cleaner version of Leatherface so you can see the difference between the two. While, yes, their DNA, their construction is pretty much going to be the same. Keeping in mind as well, these statues have a second configuration, which I think would be all the more reason why you'd want to pick up both versions of these. And of course, cosmetically, yes, a lot does get changed, as the Slaughterhouse version certainly lives up to his name. He's covered, bathed, and saturated in blood. Removing the steel stand from his magnetized feet, even the stand itself gets a slight variation to the one that we had gotten before. The 5.9 or 6-inch sized bases, though they are the same and feature the same image with the same narrative from the 1974 film, narrated by Night Court's John Larroquette. You can see, though, the Slaughterhouse version gets some blood splattered all across the surface. It's about the only thing that is different between the two. And I guess for all intensive purposes, you don't necessarily, if you do pick up both of these pieces, have to have this one dedicated to the Slaughterhouse version. You could, in fact, mix and match them. You could have this one, for example, although for the amount of blood that's all over this statue's body, may make more sense to maybe stick with this defaulted statue base that comes included with them. Funny enough, I think we're starting this review in the same place as the previous one, first addressing Leatherface's head sculpt and, of course, the skin mask that he wears. Attention to detail from Kotobukiya should be acknowledged here. The amount of work that they've put into just the mask alone, we'll, of course, talk about the rest of the statue in a second, but I'm just still amazed. The amount of paint also applied to this one. Cosmetically, yes, it does get the additional blood splattered across the one side of his face. We'll talk about that more in a second. Something I may have even not addressed in the other review of the Leatherface is the fact that the back half of the skin mask is clearly more of a darker gray than the skin that he uses for the front of the mask. I like that. Of course, the stitching crudely done by Leatherface. One thing that he didn't do, and Kotobukiya did, was they actually did take this plastic string and fed it through the eyelets. So that's actually real string. Well, it's real plastic string, but it is something that is stitched through or fed through. Now, obviously, when we're talking about cosmetically, one thing that is different with the Slaughterhouse version is, of course, all the additional blood. And as we move further down the statue, you'll sort of see where the point of entry starts down here. And then from there, it just sort of splatters its way across the, well, this one side of his face. And I'm glad it has at least a direction. It's not just everywhere. Sometimes you can get a little too crazy when it comes to blood splatter, and you sort of have to kind of be able to control it, know when to pull back a bit on it. I do feel like they've done that on the face. There are a few little spots of blood here on the one side, but generally his mask on this side stays pretty clean, short of a few little spots of blood here or there. But I mean, certainly when it comes to this side, he gets so much more of it across this face. I'm glad to see also that they knew how much blood to apply and what color of red to use. I mean, while it may seem like there's a lot across his face, they at least knew well enough to use a lighter color of red. It comes across more like plasma. It's not a really dark crimson red, and I feel like for the amount of blood that's on his face right now, if they had gone too dark of a red, it may have pulled too much away from the sculpting of the face, and certainly the paint that they already applied to the skin mask. Something that the other one also benefited from that we can talk about here, you want to talk the attention to detail. Kotobukiya, like the regular release, do apply eyelashes on the eye sockets of the skin mask. Maybe a little harder to read. There it is right there. You can see little tiny eyelashes at the tops of the eye sockets. One thing I did notice though, and it will involve me having to pick up, these are slightly more heavier statues to be carrying around and comparing for comparisons, but when you compare the two side to side like this, I couldn't help but notice on this Leatherface that the eyelashes appeared to be slightly shorter and a little bit more on an angle. It benefited this one by being able to then see his eyes a little bit more clear. Well, as clear as you can see them when the light was reflecting off of the eyeballs. The Slaughterhouse version, again, we'll just bring this one in, you'll see that the eyelashes seem to be a little bit longer. Now, I would imagine that on their end of things, they probably have people that are having to add the eyelashes possibly by hand. So it would be a case probably where each of the statues will have varying degrees. Like not all the eyelashes will be in the same place. You kind of see this one right here. The eyelashes are almost completely covering his eyes. Now I could probably go in there and see if I can flick the eyelashes out, just so that they're not blocking his eyes as much. Something I just though noticed when I was comparing the two, that the eyelashes seemed a little bit longer on this one, but I'm sure it's something I could easily go in there and fix. Once again, I'm really happy with this head sculpt. And the paint, they knew again how much to put on the face, and they knew how dark of a red to go with, so well done on their part. Now, of course, when we look at the rest of the body, most of the body is going to be staying the same. It's only really the additional red that gets brought to the table here. The apron, for example, I'm just going to bring in the other one so you can see. The apron, I don't think gets that much more red than this one here. The main amount of red that's just underneath the chainsaw blade seems to be about the same size. But then what this one does get is all the additional blood splatter that the original apron doesn't have. The hands also get some additional blood on the knuckle area. The cleaner version didn't have that. This one side gets a lot more of the red. And of course, when we're comparing the chainsaws, that's the big decider right there. The chainsaw, of course, he has clearly used it in this one. He hasn't yet used it in this one, but he's probably getting it started. Speaking of started, of course, we're going to be looking at the other way that you can configure this statue, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, it's only really more cosmetic than anything else. You're not wrong necessarily for choosing one over the other. Someone knowing, of course, and loving Leatherface for what he does with his chainsaw probably may be more inclined to pick up the bloodied version, but I definitely think that there's mileage and there's reasons for getting one or the other. And for the fact, again, you can configure the arm, configure the head, because again, the head is posable, something we didn't talk about just yet. But the head does have a ball joint, so you can move that back and forth, up and down. But then again, that's going to quite considerably play into when we start moving and configuring the figure's arms. In the meantime, though, we certainly look at the rest of the details, drawing a little more attention to the chainsaw he uses here. Once again, the chainsaw is nicely scuffed up. I wouldn't want a clean paint applied in the yellow, so it's nice to see that even when you're looking at the main motor of the chainsaw, you can see like there's silver of the metal peeking through. You can see the little bolts, for example, sculpted in there, almost as if you would be able to move those bolts. Really nice work, though, on the chainsaw. I couldn't be any bit happier with it. And again, like this chainsaw, I guess for all intensive purposes, you could try to remove it from this hand and swap it out with the other Leatherface. But again, for the amount of blood that he has all over his body, you probably would want to keep the bloodied chainsaw still in this guy's grip. And detailing done to the pants. Once again, I don't want to spend too much time talking about it because I felt I talked about it way too much in the other review. But again, the weared away area on the seat of Leatherface. Why is that something still I want to focus in on? But the very idea, again, that they wear away the back section of his pants. It seems like really when you're looking at the statue, it's about the only thing that's really worn away costume-wise on him. Speaking of, though, of his costumes, well, speaking of his shirt at least, one thing I did notice too, when comparing the two Leatherfaces, was that the Slaughterhouse version seems to have a slightly lighter color. Mileage may vary because they probably have hand-painted these. I would imagine like the color may not be consistent where every single Slaughterhouse version, for example, is going to have a lighter colored shirt. It probably just is a case that when I'm looking at the two, and I just happen to have the two in front of me, that the Slaughterhouse version shirt seems to be slightly lighter. But I can't imagine that's going to be across the board on every single release. And then one last time, we'll just look at his boots. The boots, like the other one, does have the magnetized, well, the magnets on the undersides. So, of course, you can attach that to the display base, which I don't have right now with this because it would just be so much more difficult to move the statue around while he's still attached to a display base. So I've decided to leave it off, as, of course, when I show you guys how to detach, well, both the arms and how to change out the chainsaw, something that we did in the previous review as well. So like in the previous review, I'll show you guys how to detach the arms and how to change the configuration of Leatherface to having him pulling and starting the chainsaw. If this video doesn't help you at all, one thing that Kotobukiya does include with the statues is, of course, an instruction sheet. And the instruction sheets are pretty clear to show you how to detach the arms. In fact, it actually shows you can remove the chainsaw in its entirety on the one side. I guess you could really even have the chainsaw dangling from the one arm if you wanted to. And then how to detach and remove the plate on the side of the chainsaw. All of the things that we're looking at right now will be things that I'm going to cover off right now. So I'm going to put that to the side. Starting first, what you're going to want to do is detach the arms on either side of Leatherface. I did notice, though, with the Slaughterhouse version, that this arm, it was a little tighter. So you just want to wiggle it back and forth. Just kind of go back and forth like this until it finally frees the peg from the socket. Just like that. Once that's out of the way, now you've sort of got two floating arms, which we talked about in the previous review. You can really keep this arm in place, even though the instructions show you that you can detach it. I just like to keep it in place. But this arm, so strange that I'm looking at like this, does have posability. So you can move that back and forth. Again, we'll address that more in a second. Now, to remove this hand from the grip, you really don't even need to heat it. If you were concerned in that previous review that I may have had to take a hairdryer, I didn't even have to. The plastic seems soft enough in the fingers. Really all you need to do is pry these 4 fingers further away from the palm so you sort of then can get the chainsaw handle out. And then, as you can see, it's pretty easy. I mean, once it's past that point, just slide it right off the hand. And we can just put that to the side for the time being. This arm, on the other hand, literally on the other hand, like I said, it does have posability. It looks like there's a ball joint on the inside concealed underneath the shirt sleeve. From there, you can just attach this. Well, actually, that's not true yet. What we'll also need to do is detach this part from the side of the chainsaw, similar to the one that we already had done before. And then we're going to want to pull the draw cord out. Like with the other one, you want to make sure that this, because when you get it out of the box, this is going to be sitting on this peg. Don't pull it just yet, because it needs to be detached from that first. Once that's detached, then you just feed the line out as far as you can get it, and then you'll attach it back onto the chainsaw. Maybe even just left some plastic there from opening out of the packaging, but just put that back into place like that. It stays secure enough. There's a nice little bottom look at the chainsaw, but it stays good enough in place that the plate doesn't fall off or anything like that. Now, here's something that I probably would recommend that you do. You don't have to heat this up necessarily, but it's probably a better idea to put this in the hand first before you decide to put the arms back in. Just because doing it this way, it's a lot easier to sort of hold everything in hand as opposed to trying to do it while the arms are already back in the sockets. So there you go, just attach it just enough that kind of gets it in between the fingers and the thumb. Hopefully that's showing you guys like that. And we can straighten that up later on afterwards anyways, but what you will want to do, just get it in between the fingers and the thumb. This may pop off a couple of times too. It also helps too that you have the statue a little bit closer. Right now I've got it a little bit further away, but just get it underneath there, just enough that it's holding it in place. And then from there, attach the one arm on the one side and attach the arm to the other side. Didn't think I was going to be able to do that all on camera. Then from there, just want to straighten out the chainsaw, because really what you want to have it look like is you want to have, let me just pick up the statue so you can see what I'm doing here. You really want to have it so that the line looks pretty tight. And then from there, just move the handle just a little bit just to get it in between. There you go, perfect. Between the thumb and the fingers. Get a little bit tight there, bring this around, and there you have Leatherface with the alternate look. Like I had done with the other review when we looked at the cleaner version, you can have the head posed looking down at the chainsaw if you want to, and that's the benefit of having these with the ball joints. Or, which you can also do too, which I kind of like doing with the last one, having it slightly off to the angle and just bringing the head around. And to show you guys how that differs from the cleaner version, this is what its stock looks like when you get it out of the packaging. So again, you can see the difference between the two. This was its first configuration. This is what it looks like when he's drawing the chainsaw. And then you take that element and you incorporate the idea of the additional cosmetic blood red. You have two very different looks for Leatherface, even though technically it really is the same statue. And then from there as well, can't overlook the display stand, so we'll take the display stand magnetized on the bottom of his feet and do the exact same thing with this one. And it's something that I did say when we looked at the cleaner version of Leatherface. Even though, again, it's the same statue, looking at it like this, you would think it would almost be like version 1, version 2, or Leatherface 1 or Leatherface 2. Some two different ways, two different variants of the statue, when in actual fact, it's the exact same statue. The only thing that's different between the two is the additional blood that they've splattered across his mask, more on the apron, and all across his chainsaw as well. And I really like how, just having the same statue like this, how they do two different things very, very effectively. So let's just say, now that you've watched the review of the clean version ArtFx statue of Leatherface, and now you've watched the Slaughterhouse version, you've decided for yourself, I'm looking to pick up either one or the other, or maybe picking up both. Well, the cleaner version is slated to release on various sites September 2021, so he should be coming out shortly for $179.99. On the flip end of it, the Slaughterhouse version that we had a look at in this review, most sites seem to be advertising him for December 2021 for the price point, again, of $179.99. So there is going to be a window between the two releases, give you a good opportunity to pick up the clean version and then save up and get the bloody version when he comes out. But to be fair, though, one thing you will want to be aware of, most of the online sites that advertise the Slaughterhouse version seem to have already sold out. So if you are looking to pick up the Slaughterhouse version versus the clean version, I definitely would say maybe try to get on board getting those pre-orders in place before they sell out at the places that you guys normally pick up your statues from. Still a valid argument, though. I mean, if you are somebody that has to justify your purchases to your significant other, well, this is a valid argument, because you could say, well, to be fair, it's not just the same statue, just with red paint. This one does have two different ways you can display the statue. Even look at this guy's review, and then that person could say, oh, not his review again. I keep having to have these discussions with you, and you always say it's because of this guy's review. Well, it's because of this guy's review. I'm sorry if I'm the cause of your problems. But one good thing, again, is the fact that the statue does have two different ways that you can display it. So it's not just, let's splatter paint across the statue and call it a day. because you can display it in two different, very unique ways from one another, it does validate, if you ask me, wanting to pick up both of these as opposed to just the one. Something I do want to say, though, in the closing thoughts of this final looks of this statue, is I really like the way that Kotobukiya handled the applying of the blood. It's so easy just to put in quotation marks that something is the bloodied version of a statue or a figure that's already out. But a lot of times it's just so haphazardly splattered across the statue. They clearly have been very selective where the blood is. Most of it's concentrated around, of course, the blades, the teeth of the chainsaw. And as it's fanned out, it gets more concentrated on the one side, but it's not everywhere, especially on his mask. And it's only in a few places on his arms and on his shirt. I really think that he handled the blood applying to this, that it doesn't just feel like, hey, we're going to call this the bloodied version. There is some really smart applications of where that blood had to be. And the end result is a really nice looking Leatherface. The same Leatherface we looked at before, handled just a little bit different in a different pose altogether as well. What do you guys think of the Slaughterhouse version of Leatherface? Let me know down below in the comments section. And again, a big thank you to the folks over at Kotobukiya that provided the sample of the Slaughterhouse version of Leatherface that we could have a look at in this review. Hey now, are you new to this channel? Are you using these videos as an argument as to why you have to pick up another figure? Oh, this guy's videos again? Hey, he was showing me the statue and now I want to pick up the statue. Don't blame me, blame him. Don't blame me. Please don't. Please don't blame me. But if you are new to this channel, enjoying all the content you're seeing, you can do one thing. Two things, actually. The first thing being you can hit that subscribe button down below. And then the second thing, the follow-up to that, you can also hit that bell notification so you get those friendly reminders of when new videos will be popping up. In fact, we will also be looking at some more Kotobukiya pieces, so keep your peepers peeled to this channel. And thanks for watching. See you guys next time.